Hello, everyone. My name is Justin Rubin. I'm the Chief Creative Officer at Spectrum Science. And today I have the distinct pleasure of talking to 22-year-old Sophia Upshaw. And Sophia's no ordinary 22-year-old. She's actually one of the first people in the world to be a recipient of a potential COVID-19 vaccine. So, Sophia, great to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for introducing me, and I'm really glad to be here.
Yeah, we're really psyched to have you here. And I think it's just like, walk us back to like that day, that moment, like what you were doing, what was going through your mind when all of a sudden the thought just popped into your head, like, yeah, I think I'm gonna be part of a trial. Like, what was happening?
Uh, of course, I can walk you back. So I'd say I have to start. It started back in, I'd say, March, the middle of March, when things started shutting down. So currently I am in Atlanta, Georgia, and being in a major city, the impact of COVID-19 hitting our country was really immediately felt in the city. And so I remember school shutting down. I remember, traffic just dying off. And I just remember feeling sort of helpless and, at a loss for what to do, because it was sort of all hands on deck in this country. So, doctors, nurses, first responders, everyone was all hands on deck, people volunteering. So I felt sort of helpless because I couldn't be in the lab, I couldn't be doing research, I couldn't help out. So I heard about the vaccine trial through word of mouth. So some students who I know work in the building where the vaccine trial is being held. And so I heard about it and I was like, I feel like I should sign up for this. I feel like this could help. And when I heard about the science behind it, I called and asked about the technology and everything. And they emailed me a little flyer, not a flyer, it was a packet with all the details about the study. And I looked at it and I thought, this is amazing. This is really cool. mRNA vaccines, never done before. I really want to be a part of this. And so on one hand, cool science. The second hand was, this is all I can do.
That's amazing. I think, you mentioned research and getting information. Like, some people, when they say research, that could mean to them, oh, I looked over things for a couple of minutes, or other people spend, hours and hours. Like, what went into really researching and getting into the material? Did you spend a lot of time with it? Did you really take your time getting to know what was being put forth?
I'd say at first I just read the trial information in the packet. And then I'd say throughout the course of participating in the trial, I got more curious. There were more articles being written about it. So I got bits and pieces of information. So that's how I sort of pieced together what was going on.
Wonderful. And did you have, when you were going through the process of learning about the trial, did you have any hesitation when you were thinking it through? It sounded like you were ready to make a decision and ready to jump in and help, and very gung-ho, which is awesome. Was there any part of you that was like, let me think this through for a few minutes?
I'd say no. I like jumping into things that I have a gut feeling that I want to be a part of. So I definitely signed up, didn't really tell anybody. And then after the fact told people, I signed up for a vaccine trial. So I don't think I had any hesitations before signing up, but I definitely felt hesitations during the actual process.
So when you went in, then you went into the facility alone. Like, were you with anybody, or did you? So what was that like? Walk us through that. Like, when you walked through the doors, like, what was that day like? Who did you meet? What did you have to go through? Like, we want to take that journey with you. So just tell us kind of what you saw.
Of course. So I walked into a building that it's supposed to be a children's center. But the research study unit was sort of like on the first floor. So I walked in because these are medical professionals. They were all on, checking temperatures and people wearing masks. And so I immediately came in, and this was mid-March, already wearing masks and checking temperatures. So I remember walking in, I had gotten instructions to go to the room and sort of call them beforehand and, show, hey, it's me. And, have my mask on. And so I went back, and I'd say the first few people I met were a few nurses who were going to be sort of taking care of me throughout the vaccine trial. And then I met the doctor who was at the head of the study. So he was the one who initially sat me down and walked me through every single page of the packet I had been given and every detail regarding the study, and also whether, and also asking me like screening questions.
Yeah, when you went in there, it's amazing, like this sort of moment in time with COVID. There's a lot of tension in the air and fear and whatnot. What was the vibe like when you were like in a clinical setting with all these people trying to help? Like, was it up? Was everybody up? Were they hopeful, or was everybody as sort of taking the types of precautions and being as reserved as they are, on the outside?
I would say definitely a lot of reservation and caution, definitely, which is not what we initially saw, at least in the outside world, outside of a medical environment. So it was definitely a lot of hand washing, a lot of glove wearing, a lot of distancing and wearing masks, and checking temperatures, and always asking. Every time I came in, I was asked, "Have you been experiencing COVID symptoms? How are you feeling?" So there's definitely, and I also sensed a lot of urgency in getting the vaccine trial up and running. So I definitely saw that at the beginning.
Right. And was this your first trial experience, just in general, or
Mhm.
so? Did you have any expectations going in, or how it would be, or how it would go, or you?
Not only what was written in the packet, only what was explained about the trial. So I don't think I had any expectations about what it would be like or what it would feel like. And now I'm thinking about, I probably should have thought a little bit more.
Talk to me about that, like retrospectively, like, how are you feeling now before you went in? Like, would you have done anything differently? Would have you asked questions that maybe perhaps you didn't get to?
I think I would have asked a little bit more about the science, instead of researching on my own. So the when I did talk to the doctor and a few of the nurses, it was more just casual conversation throughout the duration of the trial and initially at the beginning, and my own research about the technology behind the vaccine was very much independent. So I think if I were to do it differently, it would have been good to ask for sort of weekly or monthly updates about what was going on, and sort of the back end things.
No, that's great. This is great insight to your journey, which again, we want to be on that. We want to know what it's like. None of us have done this. So we're living vicariously through your experience. One area I just wanted to sort of get your take on, because you went through it, is, someone in the health field. And I know 2020 has been really focused on media coverage and diversity. And clinical trials have historically, there's been an imbalance of diversity. What was your experience going through? What did you see? Did you observe any of that, or lack of, or the opposite?
That's a great question, and it's actually a question I hadn't thought of until just recently. Um, so when I signed up for the trial and initially started going to my clinic visits, I didn't. I wasn't aware of any sort of disparity in diversity, only because I was not exposed or aware of any other vaccine participants. We all had different times, so I don't recall coming into or crossing paths with anyone else. But the nurses and the doctors who I encountered were a very diverse group, and majority women. And so I didn't feel necessarily a lack of diversity in the moment. But then
Yeah.
when the results came out from Moderna back in end of June or early July, that's when I became very aware of the sort of lack of diversity in choice for the initial phase 1 trials.
And did that motivate you to kind of talk about that and to raise that issue and to reach out to others?
Definitely, yes.
Um, what would you say to somebody who is thinking about partaking in a clinical trial? And what advice would you give somebody who's sort of on the fence or thinking about doing something as big as you have?
So I would say first to address the reasons why they want to participate. I think that's very important. As far as their health, their individual health, the doctors and nurses who are running the trial, they're already supposed to be screening your health and making sure you qualify for the study in the first place. So I would tell someone to consider their motives, and some people do it for money. Some people do it for because they want a cure. If they're doing a drug trial, for example, they want to be a part of that cure and receive that treatment. And I think participating in something like this, someone would have to think about, oh, am I willing to possibly, sacrifice my health and my time to participate in this for the benefit of other people? So I think that's a very important determining factor or something you have to think about before you take part in one of these.
No, that's great. I mean, what does it feel like, honestly, for us guys? Because we're in awe that of somebody like you who's gone through this and has done this so selflessly. Like, what what would you say? What do you tell people about about your experience, about how it feels to have gone through this sort of historical clinical trial? Like, has the magnitude set in with you? And when you do talk about it, like, what is the one thing that you sort of comes to mind that you talk about when it comes to sort of the enormity of this moment?
I don't know exactly. I can't pinpoint one particular uh, thing that I would say to document it. And I think that's just sort of that's due to because I'm in sort of an in between and not having results and final determination of whether the vaccine is actually going to pass all of the clinical trials. So it's very on one hand, everyone's telling me this is so amazing, it's so great, you got to be a part of this. And on one hand, it feels like if this doesn't turn out, it might, not really, it might get lost in history or get lost in my memories or in all the other experiences I've had.
So you're kind of you're waiting for information, right? And I think everybody can relate to the moment in time where we want results. And so what does that feel like? Like, are you anxious? Are you sort of biting your nails? Are you like cool with it? Are you like, yeah, well, they'll tell me what they tell me, and I'll accept it. Like, what is that feeling like right now of anticipation?
I'd say I'm pretty cool about it and very calm about it.
You
Uh,
seem cool about it. You seem cool about it.
yeah, I'm trying to be because I it's out of my control now. I've done my part. I probably have 2 more clinic visits until my participation is over, and so um, I've done the majority, the hard part, the actual vaccination process. So it feels like sort of just waiting and hoping that at least if the vaccine that I received doesn't make it to the masses, then at least one other vaccine might make it. I just have high hopes in the in the one that I received because of the technology behind it. But realistically, any of these could work, and as long as we have one, that's what's going to change our situation, I think.
This is such a unique experience, and I think about others who are going through it. Did you get to meet other people, whether it be this trial or others that you've sort of synced up with because of the shared experience and sort of bonded over that? Was there any communal aspect of this experience for you at all, or has it just been very sort of solo, like you said at the beginning when you went in?
I'd say it was isolating for a long time, but another student who I know also participated in the trial. So it's been great being able to go through that process with them. We didn't actually go in at the same time, and our times were a bit staggered at which we started the trial, but it felt good to be like, oh, how do you feel? When do you have to go in? Oh, do you need a ride? And then later on in July, I think when I became more public about it, that's when I got a lot of replies or comments from people who were participating in the phase 2 or 3 trials. So that was very exciting to see people be like, oh, I signed up for phase 2. I signed up for phase 3. Thank you for doing phase 1. I'm so excited to be a part of this. So that's where it felt like I wasn't as alone, because the amount of people who were participating grew and grew.
No, very, very nice. I'm gonna bounce back to a question you said, or something you said earlier, and I'm allowed to do that because I'm a creative. I don't have to follow rules, so I can bounce in and out of line if I may. You talked a little bit about you wanting to know a little bit more of the science. You wish you had asked some more questions. What are some of the things that you would have wanted to ask, or things that you might have wanted to see, that you would expect to see? I mean, if you could do it again and ask those type of questions, what would they be? What would you want to know? What would you want to be given to look at?
I would have wanted to know results of the phase 1 trials before they were published. Um, I think if I had asked, they obviously would have given them to me, because when I asked about the other trial participants in the phase 1 that were in another state, they would, openly tell me, oh, this is how they're feeling, and this is, how they're doing. So I think if I could go back in time and ask more questions to the doctor, for example, I would say, hey, what are they finding in the lab? What are they discovering? What do my cells look like? Is there any sort of antibody response? So, and those kinds of results, or those answers weren't really revealed until they were published. And so it felt weird to see results published. Obviously didn't have my name on it, but to see, 45 people and their responses, and knowing that one of those are me, it felt very slightly disconnecting. So I think I would have asked more questions along the way about the results of like the multiple blood draws I've had for the past 5 months. Yeah.
Or do you think you'll ever, get the chance to ask some of those questions? I mean, is another clinical trial something that would interest you, and not just in this particular area, but for anything, or is this sort of one and done for you, so to speak?
If the situation came up and I felt a need to participate in one for other reasons, I think I would. As far as a vaccine study, I think any study. I don't like needles. I hate needles. So on one hand, I'm saying yes, I want to be. I want to help society and participate, in another trial. But on the other hand, I'm like, I really hate needles and getting pricked and going into, a hospital scene.
Well, you're not alone there. I can't stand them either. That would be, and I'm a wimp. That would be enough for me to not want to do anything. I'm terrified of that. You had said that eventually you went in alone, and then you had the experience, and then you told people. What were their reactions when you shared your experience? Like, were they all over the map, or were people supportive, or like, are you crazy? Why would you do? Like, what was that like?
I'd say I'd have to categorize the responses. So there were family, friends, and then coworkers. So obviously coworkers, other individuals in academia were so excited. They were like, this is so cool. Like, I heard about it. Can you tell me more about it? So it wasn't necessarily like fear or like, what did you do? But more like, oh my gosh, tell me more. What happened? Or how did you feel? Or, oh, did you see this article about the technology? So, and then with friends, they were more just, oh, wow, I'm so happy for you. That's really cool. Family, they were very much worrisome and concerned, and very much checking in on my health and safety for at least the first 2 months, and seeing how I was doing. So they were definitely not upset, but sort of like, has Sophia lost her mind? Why is she doing this? Why couldn't she just let someone else do it? So yeah, but they got adjusted to my choice.
Well, you mentioned they were checking in on your health and safety. Did you have any fears that you would feel a certain way, or that it would impact you in a way that you weren't expecting?
I'd say I had initial fears for the first vaccination. So we got 2, and the second one was sort of a booster of some sorts. So the first one that we received was exactly a week after I had my screening. So I had been screened on a Friday, approved on a Wednesday, received the vaccination that same following Friday. So it was a very quick turnaround, and they were like, "Oh, come on in. They're sending the vaccine over to Atlanta, and you can, what time can you come in on Friday?" And I was like, "Hold up, I signed up a week ago." So when I initially came in, they told me, how long it would take and how long I would be there for. So I had to do some blood draws. They had asked me questions again and received my consent a second time. And then when they actually vaccinated me, they said, "Hey, you have to wait here an hour and sort of, wait to see if there were any reactions, and then I could go home." So I think I was initially concerned for that first hour, sitting there watching the clock and, sort of chatting. And I think that was initially because they don't know, even though you tell them whether you've had a history of reactions to vaccines, you never know. So
Right.
it's very important that they monitored my health for the first hour to see if I had any initial allergic reactions. So
What would you say to someone who's mistrustful or of receiving a COVID-19 vaccine once it's approved?
I would say to them to, one, I guess, seek out reliable resources for about the vaccine itself. So whether it's from a governmental agency or whether it's from a scientific journal. And I know scientific journals are hard to read, but just the abstract can say so much. So if I encourage people to do their own research and do it from reputable sources. And I think because the internet has so many, widely held views and people can publish anything, it's important to get reliable information so that you can make an informed decision yourself. And so if you're still not convinced by the science, then I would go to, some sort of firsthand account of someone who has received the vaccine and how they felt. So I can definitely see the value in me participating because I feel from the perspective of another Black individual and, friends and family who I've spoken to who do look like me, it felt very much that their inquisitions were sort of also for themselves to feel more comforting about taking the vaccine themselves.
Wonderful. And it sounds like that you've read up before the clinical trial about the healthcare industry's sort of collective efforts to come together for this pandemic. This is sort of like a unique moment in time where everybody's sort of rallying around the same issue. How does that make you feel to see that happening? Sort of competing entities, all coming together for the common good of humankind. What do you think of that?
It feels amazing. It feels, and I would like to say, I don't think it's just unique to America, but to the entire world sort of coming together and sharing information, sharing statistics, sharing experiences. And it's made the pandemic feel a lot less lonelier, especially when we're all isolated and inside. And I felt very alone in my feelings. So it really helped to see that the healthcare community was pulling together, the other countries were supporting each other, and then you get to see agencies like the CDC and NIH sort of like gather together and produce studies and be a lot more vocal than they usually are on a daily basis.
It seems like really kind of monumental issues are kind of like the tide, like it'll come in and then it'll draw back. Like, do you think once we've moved past this, that this unity really is sustainable? Do you think people will move forward together in the way that they have now, for good?
That's a very interesting question. Only time can tell. I don't know. That's why I'd like to hope for that we can be more collaborative in the future. Whether it's a pandemic or another crisis, I'd like to see this happen again in the future, but under different circumstances, hopefully.
You talked a little bit about, or a lot about, what motivated you to participate in the trial. What motivated you to share your experience? It's one thing to go through with it and to then move on with your life, but what really got you to that place where you wanted others to know about it?
I think it was because it came to the point where because the race for a vaccine was so widely talked about on so many news, social media outlets, a lot more conversation was starting on the topic, and whereas it wasn't talked about as much at the beginning of the pandemic. So in the past few months, it's been on everyone's mind and it's been on everyone's tongues. And so I think seeing people talk about on social media and people express doubt about participating in the vaccine trials or even receiving a vaccine, when it comes out, that's been a little bit concerning to see public influencers, for example, or celebrities sort of speak out and dissuade their followers or fans from receiving a vaccine. That really concerned me. And then also seeing and this is specific, at least to the Black community, and it really concerned me to see people in the comments, and there were even nurses, Black nurses, saying, "I know I'm a nurse, but no, this is like, I'm not going to do this. I know it, this country did to us with the syphilis trials. So, I'm not going to trust this vaccine." And that was very concerning to see that, a demographic group that's being the most disproportionately affected by this pandemic won't be able to benefit from it when a vaccine comes out. So that's me generalizing, because I obviously don't know everyone's opinions, but from what I saw on social media, it was really concerning me. And so that's when I started being a lot more vocal about my experience.
Thank you. No, that's great insight, Sophia. One word. Give us one word that sums up your experience in this historic trial.
I was going to say life-changing, but
Hmm.
I'd say pivoting.
Awesome. Sophia, thank you so much for sharing with us and for giving us a window into the journey. Volunteers like Sophia are crucial to advancing medicine through the discovery of new treatments and cures. Without them, a vaccine for COVID-19 is not possible. Clinical trials are only part of the voyage to a vaccine. Ready for liftoff?